On a night like no other, the full moon hung high in the sky, casting its silvery glow over the small, quirky town of Loonville. The streets were empty, save for one adventurous soul, Jack Thompson, a 35-year-old office worker whose spirit was as restless as a caffeinated squirrel. Jack had just finished a particularly dull evening at his cubicle fortress, surrounded by spreadsheets and fluorescent lights, and was now on a quest for snacks that could perhaps restore his dwindling zest for life. Jack was not your typical hero. With a slightly tousled head of hair that always seemed to have its own plans, a penchant for making witty comments that fell flat, and a wardrobe that screamed, "I just rolled out of bed," he meandered through the streets, blissfully unaware of the extraordinary adventure that awaited him. He passed the old diner, where the neon sign buzzed like an angry bee, and turned down a narrow alley, thinking that a vending machine might hold the secrets to his salvation, or at least a bag of chips. That it was here, in that inconspicuous alley, that Jack stumbled upon something unexpected. Glinting under the moonlight was a strange stone altar, adorned with moss and surrounded by wildflowers that seemed to bloom only under the moon's ethereal light. It looked ancient, like something out of a fantasy novel, or perhaps a really weird documentary on cable TV. Curiosity piqued, Jack approached the altar and squinted at the intricate carvings. They depicted people, some with smiling faces, others with wide eyes and gaping mouths, as if they were caught in a moment of revelation or sheer terror. "Great," he muttered to himself, "I've found the world's crummiest art exhibit." Just then, he heard voices nearby. Two elderly women, Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Blanchard, both local eccentrics known for their penchant for gossip, were engaged in animated conversation. "Every month, on the full moon," Mrs. Jenkins said, "the altar reveals our deepest desires and fears. It's magical, dear." "Magical, indeed," Mrs. Blanchard replied, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Last month, I saw a vision of my late husband dancing with a llama." "What a sight!" Jack raised an eyebrow. "Dancing with a llama? That's one way to cope with loss," he whispered to himself, chuckling. Maybe this was the kind of adventure he needed, something that made no sense and promised a break from his humdrum life. A week later, on the next full moon, Jack found himself standing before the altar once more, this time joined by an eclectic group of townsfolk. They had gathered for the ritual, and the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of excitement and awkwardness. Among the attendees were a wannabe witch named Hazel, who wore a pointy hat and wielded a broomstick like a magic wand, and Doug, the conspiracy theorist, who claimed the government was spying on them through their microwaves. "Is this the right place?" Jack asked, looking around. "Of course," Hazel exclaimed, her voice dripping with enthusiasm. "Tonight, the moon will show us the truth. Are you ready to face your deepest self?" Jack blinked. "I'm just here for the snacks." As they began the ceremony, the group stood around the altar, chanting in unison. Jack felt a mix of embarrassment and amusement as he joined in, his awkward attempts at chanting eliciting smirks from the others. It was a bizarre dance of limbs and voices, as people flailed about, seemingly unable to find the rhythm. Suddenly, the moonlight bathed the altar in a surreal glow, and images began to swirl around them. Jack watched in awe as the projections flickered to life, visions of desires and fears danced in the air. Hazel, with a look of horror, saw herself surrounded by pots of gold, only to be immediately buried under them. "Too much responsibility," she wailed, causing Jack to snicker. Doug's projection showed him standing atop a pile of conspiracy theories, only to be tackled by a giant chicken in a suit. "They're on to me," he yelled, scrambling backward. Then it was Jack's turn. As the moonlight enveloped him, the vision revealed a gallant figure, clad in a shimmering cape, standing triumphantly before a crowd of adoring fans. "Who's that handsome devil?" he muttered, squinting. But as the image zoomed in, Jack saw his own face, just slightly better groomed, and realized it was a reflection of his unfulfilled dreams. The crowd was cheering, but their faces morphed into those of his co-workers, who looked more confused than impressed. "I'm a hero in my mind, but just a guy in a cubicle in reality," he groaned, his laughter fading into a sigh. The days following the ritual felt different. Jack woke up with a strange sense of awareness, as if the moon had sprinkled some cosmic dust on him. At work, he began to hear snippets of people's thoughts, half-finished ideas and hidden insecurities floated around him like ghosts. It was overwhelming at first, but he soon found it comically enlightening. One afternoon, while standing by the coffee machine, he overheard Susan from accounting mutter, "If only I could wear mismatched socks and be taken seriously." Jack chuckled, then chimed in, "You know, Susan, mismatched socks are the new power move. It says, I'm fun, but I mean business." She blinked at him, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "What? Really?" "Absolutely. In fact, I plan to start a trend. You in?" By the end of the week, Loonville was abuzz with talk about Jack's newfound confidence, which was amusingly misinterpreted as a daring fashion statement. Jack, now the accidental trendsetter, reveled in his new identity, feeding off the energy of his humorous interactions with co-workers. Yet, beneath the laughter lay a growing discomfort. As he continued to hear thoughts, he also faced his fears. Nightmares haunted his sleep, visions of him stuck in the office forever, answering mind-numbing emails while his dreams of writing slipped away. One particularly vivid nightmare featured his reflection, which pointed at him, mockingly repeating, "You'll never be a writer, just a data entry drone." The next day, he resolved to confront his fear of writing. He signed up for an open mic night at the local cafe, where he could share his thoughts and stories, no matter how embarrassing they might be. "What are you doing?" Hazel asked, her brow furrowing as Jack explained his plan. "You're going to read your fears aloud? What if they manifest? Then I'll just blame you," Jack joked. "You're the one who got me into this mess." The night of the open mic arrived, and the cafe was packed with locals. Jack's heart raced as he watched the first few performers, talented musicians and poets, each sharing their art with confidence. Jack felt like a fish out of water, his thoughts flopping around in his head like confused jellyfish. When his name was called, he approached the mic, palms sweaty and throat dry. He took a deep breath, the faces of the crowd blurring into an intimidating mass. "Hi, I'm Jack, and I'm here to talk about my fears." He started with a joke, a classic dad joke that had people chuckling. "What do you call a fish with no eyes?" FSH. The audience erupted in laughter, their smiles warming him. He realized he could use humor to navigate his anxiety, so he launched into a comedic routine about his daily struggles, cubicle life, the perils of office coffee, and the peculiarities of his neighbors, including the conspiracy theorist who believed the town squirrels were spies. Yet, as he continued, the laughter faded, and he stumbled upon a raw truth. "But in all seriousness, I fear being stuck in this mundane cycle forever. I've always wanted to be a writer, to tell stories and make people laugh." Silence enveloped the room, and he could feel the weight of their attention. "But here I am, afraid of failure, afraid of being just another office drone." Suddenly, the image of his fears manifested before him, a version of himself trapped behind a desk, monotonously typing away. "You'll never escape," it taunted, and the audience gasped as the projection shimmered into view, highlighting his own internal battle. Jack took a step back, heart racing. You know what? I refuse to be that guy. He pointed at the projection, infusing humor into his frustration. I mean, look at him. Terrible posture and no sense of style. Laughter erupted again, and with each chuckle, Jack felt the weight lift. He embraced the moment, finding strength in vulnerability. I may not have it all figured out, but I want to try. I want to write and laugh and maybe even dance with a llama one day. The crowd roared with applause, and in that instant, Jack realized he had confronted his fears head-on. After the performance, Jack was flooded with congratulations. People approached him with smiles, sharing their own fears and dreams. The night became a shared catharsis, a celebration of honesty and laughter. As the weeks passed, Jack continued to explore this new path. He returned to the moonlit altar, eager to embrace whatever magic awaited him. This time, the ritual was different. The townsfolk gathered around, but instead of fear, they brought their hopes. Jack led the group in a light-hearted ceremony, encouraging everyone to share their dreams and desires. As the moonlight enveloped them, the images projected were filled with joy and aspiration, friends dancing, a couple getting married, a child dreaming of becoming an astronaut. Jack stepped forward, embracing the moment. This is what it's all about. Our fears might be scary, but they can't hold us back from what we truly want. And then, in a spontaneous fit of inspiration, he performed an impromptu comedic routine that had everyone rolling with laughter, mixing humor with heartfelt sincerity. Each laugh felt like a release, a step toward freedom. With every ritual, Jack found himself shedding layers of doubt and self-criticism. He began writing seriously, documenting his experiences with humor and honesty. His newfound confidence poured onto the pages, crafting stories that connected deeply with others. One night, while sipping coffee at the cafe, he overheard someone say, "Have you read Jack's latest piece? It's hilarious and relatable." A warmth spread through him. He had transformed from a man burdened by expectations to a storyteller, a weaver of dreams. The months flew by, and Jack's life blossomed in unexpected ways. He had found his place within the community, sharing laughter and connection with friends who had once felt like strangers. He held monthly gatherings at the altar, inviting others to face their fears while basking in the moonlight's glow. One particularly enchanting night, as the moonlight cast silver beams over the altar, Jack stood before his friends, reflecting on his journey. "I used to think life was just a series of spreadsheets and deadlines, but now I see it as a canvas waiting to be painted with our stories." The crowd cheered, and Jack felt a sense of belonging wash over him. As he gazed at the moon, a profound realization dawned on him. Life was unpredictable, and that was precisely what made it beautiful. Embracing his true self had opened doors he never knew existed. Just then, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was from the local paper, asking if he would consider publishing his latest piece. Excitement surged within him, and he couldn't help but laugh. "Well, would you look at that? The universe has a funny way of rewarding courage." And with that, he raised his arms in triumph, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the enchanting glow of the full moon. Life, with all its quirks and imperfections, was now a grand adventure waiting to unfold. In that moment, Jack understood the true magic of the moonlight altar. It wasn't about what the moon revealed, it was about the courage to accept who he truly was, a writer, a dreamer, and, above all, a believer in the beauty of life's unpredictability. As the night deepened, they danced under the moonlight, and Jack felt alive, really alive, a far cry from the office drone he once feared he'd become. And somewhere in the distance, he swore he heard the faint sound of a llama dancing, just for him. As the music swelled, the townsfolk began to sway under the moonlit sky, each step a testament to the newfound freedom they felt. Laughter echoed through the night, mingling with the melodies of joy and camaraderie. Jack found himself at the center of it all, dancing alongside his friends, a smile plastered across his face that felt both foreign and exhilarating. The humor that had once been his shield was now his greatest ally. It was a tool, not just for deflecting insecurities, but for connecting with others. He was no longer just the office worker with a flair for dad jokes. He had evolved into a storyteller, a conduit for shared experiences. Each laugh, each story exchanged under the moonlight solidified the bonds between him and his community. As the night deepened, Jack caught sight of Hazel, still in her witch hat, twirling with a grace that belied her eccentricity. "I think the moon likes us," she shouted, her eyes glimmering with mischief. "Look at how it shines brighter when we dance." Jack laughed, a lightness in his heart. "Maybe it's jealous we're having more fun than it does sitting up there all alone." The crowd erupted in laughter, and Jack took a moment to relish the simplicity of the joy around him. The previous weight of expectation and fear had melted away, replaced by a sense of belonging he had longed for. This was his tribe, his people, and they embraced his quirks, his humor, and, most importantly, his willingness to be vulnerable. As the dance party continued, Jack's thoughts drifted to his writing. He had filled pages with his experiences, his fears transformed into comedy. He envisioned a book, a collection of tales woven with humor and heart, stories of everyday people facing their demons, just like he had. The thought thrilled him. "Hey, Jack!" Doug called out, breaking through his reverie. "You're the one who made this night happen. We should make it a monthly tradition, a full moon festival." The idea sparked enthusiasm among the group. "Yes," shouted Hazel, "we can have poetry, storytelling, and, of course, dancing with llamas. I know a guy." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Okay, maybe just the stories and dancing for now. The llamas can come later." The idea of a festival took root, growing branches of excitement and anticipation among the townsfolk. Jack found himself swept up in the energy. The thought of organizing an event where stories could flourish and laughter could echo through the night was invigorating. As they finalized their plans, Jack stepped away for a moment, taking in the scene, the laughter, the friendships, the moonlight washing over them like a comforting embrace. He felt a sense of pride swell within him, knowing that this community had become a part of his story, just as he had become a part of theirs. In the days that followed, Jack threw himself into planning the festival. He brainstormed ideas, gathered volunteers, and even reached out to local artists and musicians. The whole town buzzed with excitement, and Jack reveled in his newfound role as a community leader, relishing the camaraderie that came with organizing something meaningful. The night of the festival arrived, and the moon hung large and luminous in the sky, casting a magical glow over the town square. Jack stood on a makeshift stage, his heart racing with anticipation as he addressed the crowd. "Welcome, everyone, to the first annual Loonville Full Moon Festival," he announced, his voice booming with enthusiasm. "Tonight, we celebrate our stories, our dreams, and the wonderful absurdity of life." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Jack felt an electric energy surging through him. He introduced various performers, from poets to musicians, each sharing their art with the crowd. Laughter mingled with applause, creating a symphony of connection. As the night unfolded, Jack took to the stage again, this time with a piece he had been working on, a story that encapsulated his journey from mundane office worker to moonlit adventurer. He began, weaving in humor and heart, recounting the awkward moments, the fears that had plagued him, and the incredible transformation he had undergone. He saw the crowd nodding along, laughter erupting at the right moments, their faces lit with recognition. "Who here has ever been afraid of something?" he asked, pausing to let the question sink in. Hands shot up all around, and he grinned. "See? We're all in this together. Let's embrace our fears and turn them into something beautiful." The crowd erupted in applause, and Jack felt a warmth bloom in his chest. As he finished his story, he could see the impact it had on the people before him. They were laughing, reflecting, and connecting, and in that moment, he knew he had found his purpose. As the night wore on, the festivities continued. People danced under the moonlight, laughter ringing out like music. Jack joined in, losing himself in the rhythm of the night. He spun around, letting go of the weight of expectation, of fear, embracing the joy that surrounded him. Then, as if summoned by the magic of the evening, a llama appeared at the edge of the square, led by none other than Hazel, who beamed with pride. "I told you I knew a guy," she exclaimed, as the crowd erupted in cheers. Jack laughed, the absurdity of it all bringing a new wave of happiness. He watched as people began to gather around the llama, taking selfies, petting it, and giggling at its curious expression. The sight was ridiculous yet perfect, a fitting symbol of the night, a celebration of laughter, courage, and community. The festival wound down with the glow of the moon and the soft sounds of laughter lingering in the air. Jack stood on the edge of the crowd, watching his friends and neighbors revel in the joy they had created together. He felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. He had stepped into the light of his true self, and in doing so, had illuminated the path for others. The moonlight altar had not only revealed his fears but had also shown him the beauty of vulnerability and connection. As the last notes of music faded and people began to disperse, Jack stood in silence, absorbing the night. He realized that he had not just created a festival, he had woven a tapestry of stories, hopes, and dreams. With a smile, he turned to leave, glancing back at the altar, where the moon continued to shine brightly. "Thanks for the push, old friend," he murmured to the altar. "I think I'll stick around for a while." And with that, Jack Thompson, the once disillusioned office worker, stepped into the future, filled with stories yet to be written, dreams yet to be realized, and a heart full of laughter. Life, he understood, was an adventure, one that was best shared under the moonlight with friends and a good dose of humor. The end.